Hello, my name is Skylar, and you're watching Reading into Reality, the new video podcast that takes an analytical view of pop culture, reality television, literature, and so much more. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the first episode of the Traitors United States Season 4. But this podcast is going to have spoilers for all 3 episodes of the Traitors that have been released so far. Traitors is one of the most highly produced shows out there, so it has these B-roll components. It has all of these counterfactual and acted components that the contestants are making, which of course I think correlates more to the higher appearance fee that these reality performers are asking for and obtaining. The appearance fees for Traitors tend to be a little bit more locked down than the appearance fees for shows that have like first-time reality performers. You know, we know approximately how much people are paid on maybe Survivor, Bachelor, but that information for Traitors has been pretty much on lock. If I had to guess, I would say that the different contestants are probably negotiating different rates for their appearance fees, you know, based on maybe how famous they are, how many other shows they've done, whether they have a non-compete with another network, whether they're NBC originals. I feel like all of these factors are probably factoring into how much everybody's getting paid to appear on the Traitors. And in my opinion, I think it should, right? These appearance fees for Traitors should be higher, like they've kind of alluded to, because these people have to film all of this, what I'm calling counterfactual content, right? They have to film all of these shots of them pretending to go to bed in the castle. They have to film a bunch of confessionals, you know, talking about whether or not they're a traitor. A lot of the work that they're doing in Traitors is directed by producers, by editors, and it's really cool to, you know, this is kind of rumored, but to hear that they're kind of getting compensated appropriately. This counterfactual content that they've been filming has even extended this year. When they had the 9 contestants who were up, you know, to be put into the graves, they actually, it seems like, made them fill in their graves, or at least we have the shots of them gathering some dirt into the wheelbarrows, wheeling that dirt over to their, you know, to their graves. And you can tell that some time passed because the other contestants who weren't up for murder, they went back to the castle and they got to change into new outfits. They weren't in their competition clothes anymore. They got to go up to the catering first. So you can tell that probably, maybe I would guess an hour, some time elapsed, right? And we are led to believe that the folks who were in black, the folks who were up for murder, were actually filling in their graves for some length of time. Now, we don't really see the entire process of the graves going from empty to full. We just see them getting like a wheelbarrow's full or a shovel scoop's full. So if I had to guess, I would say they probably didn't fill in the entire thing, but they definitely made them do some physical labor because we have the camera roll of that. And because some time passed and they seemed like kind of tired when they got back to the castle. They were talking about wanting to get to the catering, hoping that all the food isn't gone. I remember last year when Dorinda was up for murder, there was another similar situation where the folks who were in danger got back to the castle later, and Dorinda, there wasn't enough food for Dorinda at the catering. So I thought it was funny that someone said a little thing about like, oh, Dorinda, you know, I hope they saved food for you, right? This show is one of the most fascinating and exciting shows on the air, which is why it's the first one I've chosen to talk about, because there's just so much going on. There's so many different elements that they're blending together to create. Definitely the level of editing, the level of production is one of the highest in the realm of reality TV right now. And I think using these kind of storytelling elements that are almost false or acted is almost the direction that this industry of reality television is heading in. I think that Traitors is almost showing us the prototype for these types of scenes and how they can be used interstitially to craft the mood and the tone of the whole show, right? Obviously, it's wild, it's silly that they would be filling in their graves, but because Traitors is this show about getting quote-unquote murdered, I think it works wonderfully. The way that the secret traitor so far has been presented to the audience. And again, I am talking right now specifically about episode 1 of the Traitors, but this is going to include spoilers for episodes 1, 2, and 3 of Traitors season 4. So if you haven't seen those, you don't know yet what the identity of the secret traitor is, I would advise you to click out the video now. After I watched all 3 of the episodes, I went back to watch episode 1 in order to prepare for the podcast. And I also wanted to watch it and see kind of how they portrayed that secret traitor to the audience before they revealed to us, the audience, what her identity was, right? And again, spoiler warning here, but we found out at the end of episode 3 that the secret traitor in the red cloak was Donna Kelsey, Taylor Swift's future mother-in-law, which is just wild. But production actually made a fascinating choice here when it comes to the presentation of Donna Kelsey. In the first few minutes of the show, Donna Kelsey gives some confessionals where she's saying she would love to be a traitor. Never do we hear her in the confessionals say, I'm not a traitor, I want to catch the faithfuls, right? We don't hear her say anything like that. So that's just a tiny little hint. And that happened, that confessional was shown to us, the audience, before we were shown the selection of the secret traitor. So maybe that was her intro confessional that she did right when she arrived to the castle. Who knows? But if I had to guess, I would say at the time that she recorded that confessional interview, she was probably already selected as the secret traitor. So there's an interesting element of producing that's going on with Donna Kelsey's interviews, with her professional interviews, because she now is giving interviews as a traitor, but to production, she is the secret traitor, and they've decided, which, we can talk a little bit more in depth later about whether this was the right decision, but production has decided to keep the secret traitor's identity secret from us, the audience, until they become eliminated. I think that that's super fun. I feel like last year, the years before, I would see on social media commentary to this effect, like, why don't they try and figure out how to keep the traitors secret from us, the audience? What the producers did is they did, in fact, keep the identity of the secret traitor very secret from us in episodes 1 and 2, right? They didn't have Donna on the confessional presented to us saying, I'm a faithful. But they also didn't present her on the confessional to us saying, I'm a traitor, either. They kept all of that completely under wraps. The fun thing about the way this secret traitor is produced, though, is it doesn't seem like the producers and editors want to keep her identity 100% secret from the audience. In fact, it almost seems like, when I went back and rewatched it, that maybe if you're a really savvy audience member, you could have picked up on the fact that Donna was the secret traitor before production actually revealed it to us. For instance, when they have all the contestants outside the mansion, they've first arrived, they're going to open the boxes one by one. One person is going to be chosen as traitor in plain sight. When they showed Donna and her reaction to the box, I thought her poker face was crap. I thought right then that they had showed her the card. But then, as the episode goes on, there's so much that happens in a Traitors episode. There's so much stimulation, audio, visual, confessional, live. But, as the episode went on, I actually just forgot about that because there were so many other details that led me to guess that, maybe someone else is the secret traitor. Even when the whole group was gathered at the round table, they showed Alan walking around everybody in the circle, and they showed him stop kind of at Donna's shoulder and lingering there. And I swore to God that he was going to tap Donna's shoulder. In that moment, I really thought that he was going to choose Donna as a traitor at the round table. But then they showed him walk on by. So actually that moment was really clever, I think, to include by the producers, because if some people had been thinking, based on Donna's reaction to the card, that she was the secret traitor, then maybe seeing that clip of her getting passed by might make you think, oh, never mind, like Donna's a faithful, like they almost chose her because she said in her interview with Alan that she could be a killer, but they decided to pass it on by. I thought that just little moment, it was just a couple seconds of film, but it's not an accident, right? They could have cut those 2 seconds very easily and saved 2 seconds of the episode. They included that because they wanted to keep us, the audience, in the dark about whether or not Donna was a faithful or a traitor. The funniest part of the secret traitor element is the B-roll that they forced her to film in this red cloak. I am dying to know all of the details behind the scenes of how they actually got these shots where Alan is handing over the red cloak to somebody. We don't see their face. They're in the shadows. And then we see this cloaked red figure walking up the stairs, writing on the note, all of that. So I have so many questions, honestly, that I would die to know about the behind the scenes. Most importantly, was it Donna? Was she the one who was in the cloak filming those things? And if so, like, how did, if I was production, I would consider the possibility of maybe using a body double to film those scenes in the red cloak. But then, in episode 3, we get a look back and it seems like it was her in the cloak all along. So is it also Donna who's filming the shots of the red cloaked figure ascending the stairs? Everything like that? If so, this is a really interesting production choice because, of course, they don't show her face. If so, this is a really interesting production choice because, of course, they don't show the face of this red cloaked figure. But showing the figure overall, we get kind of a sense that there may be a little bit more on the petite side, right? That doesn't reveal a ton to us, but I might have thought, okay, it's probably not Colton Underwood who's in that red cloak, right? I don't feel like he would fit in there. That led me to believe maybe it's a woman, honestly. Anyways, this was just me spitballing, of course, because I wanted to know so bad who the secret traitor was. And if it was Donna Kelsey who they had filming these shots of the red cloaked figure, and they did leave in these little details, I wonder if that was an Easter egg too for us as the audience to try and keep guessing at the identity of the red traitor. Either way, I found this to be the most fascinating element of production, and I would love to know the behind the scenes tea of how they create all these like B-roll shots. I've spoken a lot so far about the more produced elements of the Traitors, like segments that might be more on the acted side. But one of the things I find really interesting is how much we actually get to see of authentic production as well. A puzzle that's always on the table for the production team of a reality television show, especially if it has a competition element, is transporting contestants if they have to film in multiple locations. Often on these reality competition shows, what they'll do is called putting the contestants on ice, which means even though they're together, they're in the same location, they're not allowed to speak to one another because they don't want there to be like a juicy conversation in these transportation, in these in limbo settings, because in a lot of these shows that setting, in a lot of these shows that transition time isn't on camera, that's one of your little breaks. And so in these transition times, a lot of the time on a show like Love Island or Survivor or Big Brother, they'll put you on ice where you're not allowed to speak, where there's a production handler who's basically just staring you down and telling you to can it if you're talking, especially about the game, but really just talking about it. However, when it comes to the way they transport the contestants on the Traitors, they don't keep that out of our audience's eyes. They show us that they're driving them around in these little black vans, and they split them up. There's about 4 or 5 contestants in each van. And I assume in the driver's seat, we never see it, but I assume there's a production member who's steering the car, someone who's hired to drive the contestants around, right? And what I find so interesting is the fact that they leave in these transitional periods too. They show us the conversations that the contestants are having in the cars. Instead of just telling them to can it and you can only talk strategy when we're back to the castle, when we've all got our cameras up and our boom mics and we can really film some high quality stuff, they've found a way. Maybe there's like one handheld cam in the driver's or in the passenger seat, an operator in the passenger seat. I would assume that that's the way that they're doing it. Or else maybe they have just a mounted remote cam and no operator, like in sort of hanging from the windshield. I would believe either of those methods. But either way, they've figured out a way to get some good quality video of the contestants in the cars as they're transported to and from the challenges. And since they're split into smaller groups, since these groups are even somewhat randomized, and since they're within the 4 walls of a car, which is honestly one of the few places that you can chat without the worry of someone else overhearing you, these transportation segments actually create a hidden opportunity for the contestants to talk game. We even saw in this episode some of the contestants utilizing it, talking about Michael Rappaport and wanting to target him and get him out. So I think that the production decision to include these transitional periods feels really authentic because we know, well, they've got to get from point A to point B. And it feels like a way also of respecting their reality performers, because some of these guys have achieved a higher level of fame. They're not going to be as amenable to the types of kind of herding around that production handlers might do on a first-time reality competitor's show like Love Island. Those contestants are pretty immersed in the Love Island bubble, and the handlers can often get them to agree to almost anything. But if you're a reality performer who's already achieved some level of success, some level of influencer career, you are probably less likely to put up with these production demands. And so I think transporting them in this way that just seems more comfortable for everyone and allows us to get these game conversations is super fun. I would love to see maybe some other shows respond in kind. One of the other parts that they reveal on the show too is how the contestants eat, which is so interesting because that's often a secret on different shows. A lot of the time on the dating shows, you won't see contestants eating at all. Famously on The Bachelor, Jesse Palmer got in trouble for eating too much when he was on dates with his woman. Like the production would try to be picking up romantic conversations over dinner and he would be shoving the steak into his mouth. They're only getting chewing sounds from his mic. So at some point, the love shows honestly started to limit the amount of food that was served to the contestants. Not so on the Traitors, though. We see the breakfast served every morning. Of course, breakfast seems like more of a production implement, a storytelling device to say, oh, who was murdered in the night? But we definitely see the contestants helping themselves to some food, passing it all around the table. It seems like it's getting served up family style, right? You get to eat it whenever you come in. And we do see the contestants actually putting the food in their mouths, so I assume that they get a square meal there. And when they come back from the challenge, we also see them serving themselves up from a catering line. So that's pretty cool to know that these contestants have a lot of dinner options and they're able to eat, maybe not freely, but at scheduled times. I think it's interesting to include too the serving of the food in the final cut of the show because you don't have to. But I guess what it means is that they're not limiting conversation over food. They're allowing contestants to eat and converse, maybe hoping that they're not going to be shoving the food into their mouth turbo speed like Jesse Palmer. Maybe they trust that these folks have a little bit more decorum and they can be handled to eat and strategize at the same time without creating like horrifying chewing sounds on the boom mic. Including that breakfast and that dinner in the final cut of the episode is almost a subtle way for Studio Lambert to say, hey, we're feeding our contestants. Hey, they're taken care of, right? We're not starving them. We're not psychologically torturing them. This is a game. And it feels almost pointed. I mean, who knows? This is totally conjecture on my part. But there have been some high profile lawsuits related to the reality show Love is Blind for, in fact, not feeding the contestants full meals, more like snacks and, gallons of alcohol, right? So I think when you put that food out in the open, you're saying, yeah, we treat our contestants right, which I believe because this is one of the highest, production value shows that's out there right now when it comes to unscripted television. There's also a lot of really fascinating elements of strategy that I'm excited to discuss as the Traitors evolves. In season 4, we've added, of course, a new strategic element when it comes to the secret traitor in their red cloak. The thing about the Traitors is it is a fundamentally unbalanced game. As Candace told us right up in this pilot, the game is called the Traitors, okay? It's not called the Faithfuls. And she is absolutely right. On the Game of Roses podcast, Chad Colton refers to Traitors as a third wave show. That is a show that's created by pulling reality contestants from all different shows, especially all different networks, makes this like a truly groundbreaking experiment as far as reality TV. And I believe this is the direction that the industry is going. These third wave shows that are uniting people from such different franchising and these third wave shows are uniting contestants from such different franchises and forcing people to meet that we never would have thought would have met and seeing the results, which are obviously and often hilarious. So The Traitors is not just a social strategy show. It's really focused on being the best third wave show that's out there right now, which means sometimes elements of gameplay are sacrificed if the production of Studio Lambert feels like they can make a trade-off maybe for entertainment value. I also thought it was hilarious how Candace and Lisa immediately became upset when they heard about the secret traitor. Not because it would make their gameplay harder, but because it made them feel like second fiddle, as Candace says. Like they're not quite the stars of the show because they expected to get all the screen time of being traitors, and maybe they're worried that this secret traitor is going to take away screen time from them. Personally, I feel like that's hilarious that that's the thing that they're more concerned about than being a traitor. But I also think that that's spot on for what this show is, right? This is one of the most watched reality shows that's out there right now. It's won a couple Emmys. If you're on the Traitors, especially if you're the traitor, that's a humongous new platform. It can launch you so crazy style, even if you're eliminated early. So honestly, part of the meta game, that is the game within the game, the strategy about the game itself, part of the meta game that players like Lisa or Candace might be playing might not be as much as like, oh, I want to kill everyone, get to the end, get that 250 for myself as a traitor. It might be more like, let me be the iconic traitor, let me be the main character traitor, let me be the traitor that everybody's going to remember. I actually think that the Housewives are spot on with this more meta strategy of attention rather than winning. Because think about the past seasons of The Traitors, maybe my favorite season, season 2. Do you remember who won? No, I remember Phaedra's performance as a traitor. I remember her telling Parvati in the castle, don't look like this, and Parvati immediately looking like this. I remember Bob the drag queen in season 3 being one of the most iconic traitors I've ever seen, going at it with Rob at that round table saying, I swear to God, I am a faithful. Yes, these are the moments that I remember. I don't remember who was the winner of what season, right? I don't remember who got, whatever chunk of $250,000. I'm not saying that that's not a lot of money. For me, that money would be a big difference maker, let me tell you. But for these contestants, it might be a drop in the bucket compared to the long game of what they might be able to earn if they're using Traitors as a platform to continue to go into an influencing or an Instagram, Patreon, cameo style career, or the speaking engagements that you can get if you're a contestant like Boston Rob, etc. So for some contestants, this cash prize might just not be enough to incentivize them to play the kind of optimal gameplay strategy. Instead, they might want to play the optimal television views strategy. And honestly, I don't know if Peacock and or Studio Lambert cares that much about this level of metagaming that's focused more on attention. If they did care, I feel like they would raise the cash prize. As far as they're concerned, it's probably better for them to get more eyes on the show, to get more conversation going on social media about so-and-so was such a terrible traitor, so-and-so was such a terrible faithful, so-and-so was way too obvious, right? If some people aren't exactly playing the optimal strategy, that can create a better game, right? Or at least a more intriguing game. The issue, of course, comes if everyone is playing kind of a cringe, fail, terrible strategy. At some point, if nobody's strategizing, things can start to fall apart and get real boring, right? You only need to watch certain older seasons of Survivor to find that out. When they cast people that are all recruited and have never watched this show before and have no idea what's going on, right? At that point, it tends to be one person who is strategic running circles around everyone else, and it becomes played out. You can predict how it's going to end from the very beginning. And to me, that's just not as interesting. So Studio Lambert is going to have to keep an eye on this incentive structure as things go forward, right? Are these reality performers more motivated to try to achieve your 250,000 prize at the end of the show? Are they motivated to stay on the show as long as possible, whether or not they win or not? Are they motivated to make as much of a splash as possible in the time that they're on the show, regardless of how many episodes they're taking up? These are three different ways that the reality performers might be looking at their time on the Traitors, and I honestly think that all of them are valid. I've heard some people say that the incentive structure for Traitors is backwards, as in you're motivated to stay in the castle as long as possible in order to get as much screen time as possible, in order to further your influencer career as much as possible, because in the long run, that can earn you much more than whatever chunk of $250,000 might be if you're trying to have a longevity in your influencing career or your content creation career. And of course, it's much easier to win the game as a traitor than as a faithful. In the first 5 minutes of the show, they even allow Jam Jam in his confessional to call that out on screen. He says he wants to be a traitor because it's easier, right? Or not necessarily easier, because you got to do some lying, but there's one less opportunity for you to be killed. So there's a higher probability that you're going to stay in more episodes, get more of that screen time allotted to you, of course, because you've got the turret shift as well for an opportunity for you to have some dialogue, even if you're not having confessionals, right? So there's just countless more screen time and advancement opportunities for the contestants who are selected as a traitor. You could tell that Jam Jam was pretty disappointed that he's not going to be able to capitalize on those opportunities. Honestly, if the Traitors get to recruit at some point, I think Jam Jam would be such a wonderful recruitment choice. I'm really crossing my fingers that something like that would happen, especially because there's no gamers in the turret right now. I don't have a gamer bias. I want to love the people who come from all of the different walks of reality life. But of course, the game shows are the ones that I originally started out watching. So I think that since we've already lost 2 gamers, I don't know if I want the other 3 to just get annihilated right away. That would be kind of a steamroll. So if they're looking to recruit and they recruit Jam Jam, that would make me fabulously happy. Of course, not all of the contestants have this meta strategy of acquiring as much screen time as possible or as much time in the game as possible. There are definitely contestants who are here right now who are focused on winning or on competing and doing the best they can as far as the competitive front. Ian Terry said that he wanted to crack open the faithful game, which I just thought was a fabulous wording of it. And he is spot on. We kind of have developed so far in the meta game of the Traitors. How do you play the best traitor game? I think we have a couple examples of like a perfect traitor game. Definitely Suri in season 1 of the US Traitors played what I would call a pretty close traitor game. Some of the elements of her gameplay that allowed her to be so successful as a traitor was having a couple really tight-knit allies who believed wholeheartedly that she was a faithful and would vouch for her. I'm thinking of like Stephanie and Rachel Riley. Of course, Stephanie has discussed after the show that she had some suspicions that Suri was a traitor. But either way, they were aligned, so she sure wasn't voting against Cirie, and it worked out the same way. I think we've seen examples so far of a near perfect Traitors game, most notably in season 1 of the US Traitors with Cirie Fields, but there's sort of a perfect, faithful strategy that hasn't quite been cracked yet. And I think that one of the best ways to do that is similar to maybe the strategy that Tiffany is trying to employ in these next few episodes. Well, we'll get into that in the next few episodes. So Ian Terry says that he wants to crack the faithful strategy, and I think he's spot on, because while the meta of the traitor strategy has been developed somewhat so far, I don't think that the same is true for how you can play the optimal strategic game as a faithful. And it would have been great if we had gotten to see a little bit more of what Ian planned to do on those lines, but maybe some of the other folks who are in the games right now can help to develop that optimal faithful strategy. And of course, the player who's probably playing the best strategically right now would be Rob Roush, our third traitor, who's up in the turret along with Lisa Rinna and Candace from The Real Housewives. I thought that Rob Roush's introduction as a traitor was just fabulous. He immediately understood the assignment. It's also freaking hilarious to me that he talks about the fact that the girls he's dated. Of course, he appeared on Love Island USA season 5 as a Casa Amor boy, and then on season 6 as a main member of the cast. And definitely a lot of those girls on that cast had trouble when it came to dating Rob. They called him hard to read, is what he mentions in this show. I would say that some of those girls maybe thought that he wasn't being 100% honest, or that he would kind of flip-flop. Maybe I would say Leah Kateb, especially on season 6 of Love Island, seemed to think that Rob was not always being truthful with her, like she couldn't always figure out how he was feeling. In other words, so what that boils down to is that in his personal life, Rob Roush has a pretty good poker face, and it seems like he feels confident about transferring that skill onto the traitors, which is kind of terrifying if I was to know him in real life, but from the perspective of me as a viewer at home, I think that it's absolutely thrilling. I think Rob Roush, in fact, has the potential to take it all the way as a traitor. His personality is just like, he has this kind of dry sense of humor, to where when he's talking, you never quite know if he's being serious or not. Definitely, I felt like when he was flirting with girls on Love Island, there would be a little bit of a negging or kind of an assumed confidence that he would take on. So it's hard to know with Rob Roush whether he's ever being sincere. And I think that level of kind of sardonic wit that's in his personality just naturally is a great fit for the role of traitor. So whoever at Studio Lambert or Peacock or NBC production decided that Rob Roush should be filling this role is honestly genius. I think it makes a lot of sense too, just thinking about Peacock and Bravo and NBC, their perspective. They want to protect their properties. So it's funny to me that the 3 folks they've chosen for the turret all come from NBC properties, right? We've got 2 Real Housewives, and we've got a Love Island USA contestant there. The 4th traitor that they had, of course, Donna in the red cloak, is not necessarily connected to any TV network. She hasn't been on TV before, but her connections to the NFL are at least somewhat tangential to NBC, right? So we've seen past seasons where the turret was dominated by folks from like VH1 network, which has RuPaul's Drag Race, Bob the Drag Queen, or you've seen the turret dominated by folks from CBS's reality game shows. Think Danielle from Big Brother, or Boston Rob from Survivor. So I think that it's pretty smart on the perspective of Bravo to mix up the meta of the game a little bit. Some folks have been complaining that there's not a gamer in the turret, but I think it makes sense. We've had 3 full seasons where there was always a gamer in the turret, and that's come to be a little bit expected. So I think also, considering that this show does belong to NBC Universal at the end of the day, that they're going to put more of their focus on the characters who are coming from their NBC shows, their reality performers from their NBC properties. Natalie Anderson is another player who I would say is playing one of an interesting strategic game. I don't know if I would say a good strategic game. I thought, about halfway through the episode when she gathered a group of 4 or 5 folks in there and she was saying, guys, I am just going to commit to playing as an aggressive faithful. I thought that that was a pretty risky strategic move, because you really don't know a lot of these folks yet. You really don't know which side they're on, which role they're playing as far as traitor or faithful. You don't know if they have alliances that you're not privy to. You don't know just what their motivations are for voting, or whether they suspect you already as a traitor. You don't know anything yet. So it's really, really a kind of a bold and dangerous move to put yourself out there so early in this way that Natalie's doing. But it's also consistent with Natalie Anderson's personality. If you've viewed Survivor San Juan del Sur or Survivor Winners at War, you will know that Natalie is no holds barred. Natalie will do whatever it takes to win, right? One of her most iconic moves was playing an idol on someone who she was only tangentially aligned with to get out. One of her closest allies, Baylor, who believed she was going with Natalie to the final three, right? She played this idol just like a badass at Final Five, knowing that it was going to kill Baylor, her Final Three alliance. And she did that because she knew that having Baylor at that Final Three would be too powerful. She knew that that was probably her last opportunity to take a shot and to go to the Final Three instead against someone who she thought was a better competition, the girl she put the idol on. And she was spot on correct in her calculus. So, yeah, Natalie's purview is to make risky moves and to just cross her fingers and hope that they pay off. And I don't know if it's her confident approach is part of the reason why this works out so well for her, but maybe, yeah, maybe it's kind of a fake it till you make it type of thing. She approaches things just with such a self-belief that they're gonna be successful, and maybe that's why they end up succeeding for her in these reality games. The rest of Natalie's playstyle was consistent with this strategy that she threw out there. She said she was gonna be an aggressive faithful, and she was really aggressive in the physical challenge in this episode so far, really going for the money bags. Although I thought it was another little bit of a mistake that she made in the car going to that challenge when she said, oh, if there's a shield, like I'm gonna go get a shield. Why would you say that? First of all, if you're trying to be sneaky and get a shield, don't alert anyone else to the possibility that there might be a shield out in the world. Like, why would you tell other people to look for the shield and create more competition for yourself? Second of all, if you're like, oh, I'm getting the shield, that means, oh, I'm not doing what the group is doing, i.e. putting money in the money pot, right? I mean, it's not necessarily traitorous to get a shield because it means you're afraid of murder, but I don't know. It's not necessarily faithful either. Then again, like, none of this stuff is out of character for Natalie. So if the other players who are in the castle are familiar with Natalie, familiar with her personality and her playstyle, then none of this stuff will seem too like alarming to them, I don't think. Because Natalie is an extremely physical contender, right? She has actually competed on MTV's The Challenge. She's basically our only challenge representation that's on this season, unfortunately. Yeah, we don't have any MTV originals here on this season of Traitors. Boo! Do better, Studio Lambert. Of course, we do have Natalie, who was very, very briefly on one season of MTV Challenge, although she was taken out, of course, because she was, medically removed from that season because she had found out during the course of that season that she was going to have her baby. So she couldn't obviously be in these physical challenges. But while she was there, she was partnered with Wes, who, of course, was on a past season of Traitors, and they were doing really well. Honestly, I think if she wasn't pregnant, they would have been set up to win that season. And it's really sad to me that, MTV Challenge has never asked Natalie back, or at least maybe it hasn't worked out. I don't know. She has a young child at home, of course. But I think if she has enough time off to go play the Traitors, then Challenge should call her back up again. I think that she could abso-freaking-lutely dominate things. Natalie probably is our biggest physical contender right now, so I guess it does make sense that she would go for the shields. And since the other folks probably know her reputation as a challenger, hopefully they won't think too negatively of it. They won't try and pin her as a traitor or anything based on that. That would be a little bit silly, but you never know this early in the game what's going to call attention to you. So that's why overall I feel like Natalie's strategy is pretty risky, but it could still work out well for her. It remains to be seen, especially now that two gamers have been killed. If I was her, I would maybe want to put my head underwater a little bit. I would feel like they're coming for the gamers, but it's hard to know with this shortlist strategy that's been happening. I'm not sure now that the secret traitor I'm not sure now that the secret traitor mechanism isn't in the game anymore, whether there will still be a shortlist, whether there will be limits on who's killed. But if I was Natalie, I would be maybe a little bit worried. There were some other folks who really stood out to me as physical challengers, specifically Rob Roush. He even said before the challenge began that his strat is to try as hard as he can physically and be like a really strong challenger and be really almost faithful in that way so that it's not suspicious. Oh, why is Rob Roush not getting killed tonight? Oh, well, he's so physical. He's helping us so much to earn the money. Why would the traders want to kill him? The traders would want him to earn money for us. See, that level of abstract thinking of how like the faithfuls might be thinking is so impressive to me. And he's absolutely right that if you're a trader, you do need to be trying really hard in the challenges because that's one of the only opportunities you get to kind of present yourself as faithful, right? But it's a little bit worrisome for Rob that he's been twice up for murder. Of course, some of the top strategists in the house would be the other gamers, Rob's sister Nino, who immediately formed an alliance with Tiffany Mitchell. I loved their little conversation and the way they were both like, we don't need to talk again, which is the right strategy. If you have an alliance, you should have as few meetings with that alliance as possible, because the more you're seen together, the more other people might be able to pin that alliance as existing. If you guys have enough trust, have enough confidence, and are able to limit the paranoia enough so that you don't have to meet that often, you don't have to just keep confirming the same thing, right? If you tell each other an information, you tell it once, boom, it's done. We don't have to have follow-up meetings. That is, of course, easier said than done, but I think the fact that Rob and Tiffany recognized that definitely deserves a shout out. And one of the last strategists I want to talk about is Candace herself, another traitor. I have been hearing and seeing a lot of critiques of her traitor's game. I mean, within the first few minutes of being selected as a traitor, she was throwing out other names before she had even been up to the turret to see who her fellow traitors were. And that got her into a little bit of trouble because she pointed at Lisa Rinna, who was indeed her other traitor. This move was kind of baffling to me. It's like, why would you say someone before you know who is who? And you're a housewife. Why are you saying one of the other housewives? But her explanation to us in her confessional interview was that while I'm a faithful, I need to be like, her explanation to us while she was in the confessional interview, though, was while I'm with the faithfuls, I need to be a faithful. This is almost like an immersive, like method acting that Candace seems to be doing. She's trying to think like a faithful. She's trying to be a faithful. Even if that means, I guess, non-optimal strategic decision makings, which is fair enough, because a housewife who's a faithful probably also wouldn't be making the most optimal decisions. But, you know, I think that the fact that she pointed to Lisa, she didn't say very much. She kind of just seemed like Lisa was sus. She'll probably be able to walk that back pretty easily. But having that in her back pocket, that she did throw out that name to a few people, might down the line earn her some goodwill. Say Lisa were to be eliminated, she might think back or even say to her fellow faithfuls, I knew it, like I knew it all along. And she has a little bit of evidence there. Of course, that would only work out as a show of goodwill for Candace if Lisa were to get banished before her. And it's probably better for the both of them that they both stay in, right? We want two housewives in this game. The biggest, most glaring issue with this season of The Traitors is already on full display in episode 1 here of The Traitors. And it's a casting issue. Studio Lambert, I have a question for you, because there are just countless reality performers from countless different shows across networks that would be a wonderful, wonderful fit for this show. And I understand that you want to round out the cast. You want to have folks who fill all sorts of different archetypes. You want to have someone who falls into like a villain or an asshole type of category. My question to you, Studio Lambert production team, is this. Why do they have to be a real life asshole? Why can't they just be like a made for television asshole? Because there is a difference, right? There is a difference in tiers of offense. Tom Sandoval cheated on his girlfriend. He cheated on his girlfriend. It's an asshole thing to do. But it's not an illegal thing to do. It's not a violent thing to do. It's not like a dangerous thing to do. It is a sexist thing to do, absolutely. It's a hateful thing to do. It's a complete lack of care for the person you're supposed to love. Absolutely, it's a total scumbag thing to do. But again, it's not illegal. It's not dangerous, violent in the way that I have a problem with, right? Sandoval is a TV villain. There's no problem I have, Studio Lambert, with you casting your TV villains. My problem is when your villains go real world, right? When we have villains in this show who are villains in the real world, who are abusive to women in the real world, who stalk women and endanger them and make them fear for their lives, right? And you don't get to escape these types of claims by coming out. Being a gay man does not preclude you from perpetuating misogyny, from perpetuating sexist and gender-based violence, right? In fact, a lot of the gay men in the world, especially folks who come from a place of privilege like Colton, right? The former NFL player, right? A lot of gay men actually hold really violent and misogynistic attitudes towards women. So I feel like sometimes people pull out the, oh no, like Colton came out, like he doesn't date women anymore. They pull this as like a get out of jail free card for the crimes, the convicted, documented, by the way, crimes that Colton has committed so far against women, right? So this is a glaring issue I have with the show, especially when you present Colton to me and you let him tell me in these confessional interviews that he has a mode he can go into that's like a violent killer mode. I'm pretty sure that's what he said in the interview. That disgusts me. That you would hire somebody for your show who self-proclaimed has this ability to switch between personalities, to switch into a dangerous or violent personality. Because when you hire folks for a reality program and you place them in close quarters, they're not, I guess, sleeping together in the same castle or anything, but you are placing them in close quarters for a period of like 3 or 4 weeks. When you do that, you have a duty of care to these contestants. And I think that, unfortunately, Studio Lambert Production has failed all the women of this cast by putting Colton in this cast. And Colton's not the only member of this Traitors cast who has a history of harassing and endangering women either. In fact, Michael Rappaport pleaded guilty to 2 counts of aggregate harassment against his ex-girlfriend in 1997. And since then, Michael Rappaport has continued to be a complete asshole online, on his podcast. He got suspended from Twitter multiple times. He got fired from Barstool Sports, which if you can get into a controversy with Dave Portnoy and come out looking like the worst person, then you are like a real life villain on a scale that I cannot even begin to address here. And just in general, he has continued to spew hateful and harmful rhetoric on his podcast. And he is also not even fun. Michael Rappaport is not even like giving us TV villain in the way that Danielle was with her crazy out-of-pocket decisions, and the way Parvati was with her one-liners and her hair tosses. There's a difference between this type of villainy, which is fun, which is entertaining, which actually adds something to the television show, and versus the type of villainy that Michael Rappaport is showing to us so far on episode 1 of The Traitors. Because mostly it just seems like he's here to be loud and to be an asshole and to hear his own voice. And honestly, that is not adding anything to the show. It's taking away so much from the show. The only way I would have been happy with this casting, I assumed at least, that the reason that they were putting Michael Rappaport on this cast was because the rest of the cast is so stacked that they wanted someone who would be an easy out at the first round table. Because I feel like the fans are always just so sad about whoever goes first at the round table, no matter who they are, or of whoever gets murdered first, no matter who they are. If I had to guess, I would say that Studio Lambert cast Michael Rappaport as sort of cannon fodder. He was intended for the Traitors to murder first, so that no one would be mad at them for murdering like the most iconic, people's favorite reality players. Or else, I assume the production thought that Michael Rappaport would be so disruptive that everybody would banish him at the first round table, and that way, again, it would prevent one of our favorite contestants from going first at the first round table. So my assumption, honestly, was that they cast Michael Rappaport to go first, and yet that's not how it worked out. Instead, we just have him here, sucking all the air out of the room, taking up screen time, and just being a total loser, and we could have spent that time with one of the other like 21 contestants on here who I find so compelling. I think it was a real miss on Studio Lambert Productions' part to cast Michael Rappaport. I think it was a real miss on Studio Lambert's part to cast Michael Rappaport, and I hope that they don't follow through with this sort of pattern of casting real-life villains like Michael and Colton from further on. I hope they go back to more of a reality TV villains like Sandoval. They could take a leaf out of House of Villains book. This is another third wave show that used to be on E, but I think they actually sold it to NBC Peacock, so the next season of that should be coming out on Peacock fairly soon. At any rate, House of Villains casts like TV villains, like a Tyson Apostle, who's going to be on this upcoming season. They had Johnny Fairplay and Johnny Bananas of Survivor and of The Challenge MTV, respectively. Both of those guys are total TV villains, total assholes for TV, but they know when to turn it off. They don't take it real world. Of course, Johnny Bananas already played on The Traitors. He was a great example of a TV villain. They really should have pulled somebody from the MTV Traitors if they wanted a TV villain. They did not need to cast real life villains, men who really go out there and are convicted and plead guilty to harassing women in the real world. Because if you're going to cast them for a cast that includes women, then you are endangering the other folks that you're hiring for this role. It's just not fair, and it's just not right. And it's not even creating entertaining television, so I honestly don't understand why it needed to occur. And this podcast format is a little bit looser. I know there's already a lot of recap podcasts out there, and so instead of going beat by beat through the plot of the episode, I thought that it would be more entertaining to give more of my perspective on the production side of things and my thoughts on the storytelling devices, both true and counterfactual, that are being used in this episode. And to end off the episode, I also wanted to give out some awards, call attention to some of my favorite things that have been happening on the show so far in this episode. The first award I want to give is my character award. I'm giving this out to the person I feel like is embodying the character of the Traitors Castle the best, because of course there's sort of an element of role play that's going on. Yes, it's a real social strategy game that they're immersed into, but the reality performers are also sort of playing a role of, oh, I'm in a castle, I'm a traitor, or of course I'm a faithful. And there are some folks who are really understanding the assignment there as far as immersing themselves and embodying this character and committing to the super fun tone that Traitors creates as like a murder mystery game show. One of the folks who has been a pleasant surprise for me, I wasn't very familiar with him before the show began, is Eric Nam, K-pop star. He has participated in some TV shows before in Korea and Japan. These variety shows are pretty common for K-pop idols to perform in. I would say the best Western analog for them would be maybe like a Whose Line Is It Anyway? Kind of an SNL improv skit type of a TV show is the where Eric has had his TV experience so far. So I actually feel like I'm seeing that improv or acting style skill translate so well into Eric's performance on The Traitors. I don't know if he totally understands the nuances of the social strategy game, but I thought that his reactions to everything that were happening in the castle was just so top tier entertaining. When he was like, who's gonna kill me, when the like coffin was in his thing, he seemed genuinely distraught, as if he's gonna be murdered. Like, he is really seeming so sincere in his reading into the like murder and death and danger element of it all, and so he is just hilarious to me in that capacity. I also think that Maura Higgins is playing a fabulous character. Maura, of course, rose to fame on Love Island UK Series 5. She's probably one of the most popular islanders out there, besides maybe a Molly May. And Maura went on actually to host a few challenges on the UK version. They had her come back and just like do a little Vanna White presentation of things. Now I'd be like, wow, that's Maura. Like, that's who I wish I could be, essentially. And they also have brought her now into the United States to do After Sun, which is the talk show that reports on Love Island USA. So Maura has even more television experience in the hosting capacity rather than on the contestant side. And I think that it's super fun how she's embodying what she would call like this innocent ditzy girl type of character. However, I think that not all of it is an act. There's a little element of Maura that's maybe not the sharpest crayon in the box, but I think her personality is hilarious. I think she is so, so fun and bubbly, and she is like bringing everything to every scene she's been in so far. And the third nominee I have for my character category is Kristen Kish, the goddess. I thought that her interview with Alan, where she was like, had her eyebrows down and she was all ready to go, and she was saying like she's a chef, so she's all murderous and stabby. Honestly, spot on. As somebody who's worked a lot in food service, who's been in a lot of kitchens, chefs are crazy. Chefs are insane. I would not feel safe around a chef if they were the traitor. I will just tell you that. So I thought that Kristen, leading into that stereotype of the crazy, like rageful chef, was hilarious and was a perfect fit for this TV show. So those are my three nominees: Eric, Maura, and Kristen. And the winner of my character award for episode 1 is Eric Nam, because I think that his like sincere, faithful, wide-eyed approach is just hilarious, and it's going to be such an awesome foil to the like evil, conniving traitors as the season goes on. Hopefully, anyway. I hope that we get to see a lot of Eric. Again, I was not a fan of him before this, but I'm totally falling in love. I think that he is so charismatic and so funny every time he's on screen. I want to give out an award to the best outfit. You can see, of course, that I'm in my Traitors outfit today. I'm my all black a la Traitors robe. Number 1 would be Kristen Kish in her red suit. Again, she shows up on my awards because she was just looking so sharp in this first episode. Of course, Kristen comes to us from Top Chef, which is an NBC property, and she, in fact, rose to status of hosting on that show. So she's got a lot of experience by now in front of the camera, and she is really, really making good on it. That red suit was just beautiful, eye-catching. It was the perfect entrance outfit for the show. Make sure that she is memorable. Yeah, doing numbers in my brain as far as I'm concerned. I also want to nominate Candace's like pink vest that she had over the white blouse. It was legitimately so cutie, so cottagecore vibes. The cut of the vest, where it was sort of under the bosom, is very interesting. I like that kind of tailored but feminine style. And then the third nominee I have for best outfit is Alan Cumming in the coffin coat that he wore during the lake challenge when the contestants were trying to pull coffins out of the lake, and his gray jacket was fully shaped up like a coffin sticking up behind him. Never in my life have I seen such an outfit. And obviously, the clear winner of this category is Alan Cumming. I'm not sure in future episodes whether I'm even going to allow him to be nominated for outfit because it just doesn't seem fair. Another award that I'm going to nominate for today would be the best one-liner. There are a lot of really great lines that came out. I don't know about copyright, so I'm just going to imitate the contestant the very best that I can do and present these lines to you. Number one is Candace saying, "I'm shaking like a faithful," opening up her box to see whether she's the traitor chosen in plain sight or not. My next nominee for favorite line is during the choosing of the traitor in plain sight, when Mama Kelsey goes up, Dorinda is whispering, "No one's gonna murder her. The Swifties will kill you," which cracked me up. The delivery, the tone, like she seemed like she was legitimately worried of a Swiftie mob coming into her house at Blackstone Manor and killing her. And my next nominee for favorite line would be Lisa talking to Alan Cumming and saying, "Why am I a threat? Well, I think because I'm Lisa fucking Rinna." I have a couple more nominees for this category, one of which would be Michael Rappaport saying, "Those miserable fucks, they put it in mind, those miserable fucks." Like, what on earth would compel you to speak in such a way? It was just so bizarre that it made me laugh out loud. Again, I'm really disappointed that Michael's on the screen at all. I don't want to call that much attention to him, but that did really make me laugh because you are the miserable fuck, Michael, honestly. And then my last nominee for this category would be Johnny Weir when he's in the boat. He's telling us, he does this whole monologue to us about how he's in the gay boat. He's got Big Daddy Colton, which, ew, come on. I'm sure he didn't know about Colton's crimes, but ew. And then he finishes out this whole monologue by saying, "And we got Taylor Swift's soon-to-be mother-in-law," i.e. Mama Kelsey is in the boat. Oh, my rabbit is digging around or something. Sorry if you hear her little snuffles. But I thought that that implication that Mama Kelsey belongs in the gay boat because she is Taylor Swift's future mother-in-law, fascinating. Is Johnny Weir a Gaylor truther? Or is he just referring to the fact that Taylor Swift has a lot of like gay male fans? Does Taylor Swift really have a gay fan base now that she's like going right wing? Yeah, I mean, there are fascinating implications in that line. Honestly, though, I do think I'm gonna give the award to Shaken Like a Faithful, because how do you beat that? That was hilarious. She understood the assignment to a T. My final award of the podcast will go to the best facial expression. And I, again, due to copyright, I'm just going to do my very best to reproduce those facial expressions myself. These are roughly in chronological order. Number one was Candace at the round table when she got chosen, going silently in place, celebrating by just moving her head side to side. Number two would be after the choosing of the round table, we've got Lisa Rinna in the confessional. She's telling us, the audience, how she feels about being a traitor for the first time, and she just kind of goes like, she just celebrates with her hands up, with her mouth open. I thought that that expression is so funny. The next nominee for this category is Lisa Rinna, right after she's been chosen as a traitor, going up to the others, and they're saying cheers. They're saying faithful cheers. She puts her eyes very intensely at them. Faithful cheers. That crazy intense eye contact, probably because she couldn't move any other muscle in her face, right? That crazy intense eye contact, I honestly thought was going to blow her cover right there. My next nominee for best facial expression would be Monet Exchange in the confessional during the challenge, when she told us that, you know, two of the boats were kind of scrapping, going at it for the coffin, but Monet and the gay boat had Colton in there, who just like picked up the coffin with two fingers. And I loved the way that Monet's face was when she was saying like he like picked it up with two fingers. That was a super duper cute expression. The last nominee I have for the facial expression category is Maura Higgins. There's this confrontation that happens towards the end of this last episode where Candace and Portia and Michael are disagreeing about, did Michael say, oh, put the casket in the housewives? So they bring everyone together in the kitchen and they're confronting. And, you know, they say to Candace, hey, they bring everyone together in the kitchen. They're confronting Michael, and they say to Maura, "You were there. What did she say?" And her eyes go. And someone says to Maura, "Stop looking like that." She goes, "No, looking like what?" And she tells us afterwards that she straight up did not remember what happened in the car, which again goes back to why I'm saying maybe Maura is kind of the ditzy character, right? But her eyes, her like deer in headlights expression, and then getting told to stop looking like that, that combination together was so funny. So Maura Higgins, stop looking like that, guilty eyes, was my top facial expression of the episode. That concludes my rundown of the Traitors US Season 4, Episode 1. I will be recording another podcast very soon related to this batch of episodes. Honestly, I loved getting to go through this more in depth, talk about the strategy, talk about the behind the scenes, the production, the characters, and the writing. All of the pieces that go into creating an unscripted show, just like any other piece of media or literature. Thank you so much for joining me here. This is Reading into Reality, and my name is Skylar. I can't wait to bring you another episode of the podcast very, very soon. Make sure to subscribe down below, leave a comment, tell me if you agree or disagree on all of my budding Traitors opinions, and turn on that bell notification so you'll know every time I post. Thanks so much for watching.